Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand Rangers podcast. My name is Cameron Bell. I'm your host on this week's flagship, stepping in for David Edgar, who, as it turns out, has been doing an absolutely phenomenal job across at Dubai Loyal, where he was in such great company as Graham Souness, Mark Haitley, and Ian Durant. And I'm maintaining the international flavour for this week's flagship as I reach out to my very good friend and chum from the Far East, Rob Shorthouse. Rob, thank you so much for joining us. It took two grown men a lot of time, maybe too much time, people would say, to be able to work out how the world clock works so that we could arrange this chat together. However, it's always a pleasure to talk to you, my friend.
It is a pleasure, and Cammy, that was an absolute humiliation, and I have to accept full responsibility because you were saying to me, right, I'll speak to you tomorrow morning, and I was like, right, okay, and I didn't even know what day it was, and we just got completely confused, and you were very gracious and pointed out the fact that today is, in actual fact, as we're recording, it's Tuesday and not Wednesday, so that was very helpful in that regard. So it's great to be on. Exciting. We've just had the transfer window slamming shut, as I think we're contractually obliged to refer to it, and yeah, so lots and lots talked about, and looking forward to it very much.
Yeah, the reason, Rob, as to why the flagship is out this afternoon on a Tuesday rather than its regular Monday slot was because, and I'm glad to say I was proven right by this, I thought that there could be other changes. Now, please don't accept that, folks, as me knowing anything that I'm not supposed to. Trust me, I think it's not born out of I'm in the insider gossip circle. It's because it just felt to me, Rob, that this Nadiri signing, I was positive that it was going to happen, but for anyone who was following the story as that developed, and Christ, now I am sounding like someone off of Sky Sports News. The Rangers had a sticking point with Hansa Rostock around being able to get Nadiri now or being able to get him in the window. Rangers initially went in with a bid for him for, I think it was something like 2.8 million. That bid then increased to 3.1 million. And Rostock were, and I can't blame them for this, they were really keen to ensure that the deal was done promptly so that they, in turn, could spend money being able to bring in someone to replace Nadiri because they acknowledge the fact that he is significant to the team and, it could severely damage the overall team if he was to move in this window. However, Rangers stood true. And then the final figure we believe to be something around 4.75 million. He landed, we think, in the UK yesterday afternoon, got from Manchester up to Glasgow late last night. So he was able to complete the deal roughly about 10 o'clock. And then Rangers did the social media announcements around about 11:30, I think it was. So that is the reason as to why the flagship was late coming out, because we wanted to be able to talk about this. And Rob, in particular, I'm keen to get your thoughts on, I suppose, how this deal was conducted. And I'll share my thoughts in a moment. But Rangers have done well in terms of just getting it confirmed. I wonder what the reaction would have been if they had then released a statement to say that he was coming in the summer.
Yeah, I was very clear that this is who we wanted. There was no, right, we want this boy, but we're not going to get him, so we'll go to plan B or plan C, or end up with Filippo Manieri as one transfer window ended up many years ago. This was definitely the boy that we were looking to try and get in. It was very clear, I think, from the way in which the manager spoke about him last night when they put the statement out about the unveiling, that he's pretty excited about working with him. They think that he's got what it takes to fit into the team, and so we were debating on our group chat last night, Cammy, weren't we? That that you're better, I suppose, to pay slightly more than what you originally intended to in order to get your number one target, rather than paying down a bit and then paying extra on a loan fee or a transfer fee for somebody that you didn't really want, that wasn't your top target. So it was a bit of, well, it was a couple of days of drama, wasn't it? Because it seemed like it was off and then it was back on again, and then we had that brilliant sort of transfer deadline day of he's been spotted, he's in Manchester, the photographs of him in the back of the car speeding into the training centre and all that kind of stuff. So there's a bit of deadline day drama, but I think more importantly is that this is definitely the number one target. This is who they wanted, and they've gone out and got him. And a special word, I suppose, to the social media team, because even though I'm out here in the Far East, I did watch Traitors, so I got the reference straight away, and it was a cracking way to unveil a new player. So very, very happy to have him. Unknown quantity, of course, because I don't think any of us would pretend to be avid watchers of the German third division, but I think the way in which we pursued him, the way in which we identified him as the top target, I think means that the club certainly think he's got something about him, and I suppose as fans, we should probably be excited too that somebody that was so highly sought after by the club has managed to be here with us. So yeah, a fairly dramatic couple of days, but yeah, happy to have him here.
Yeah, I mean, I know that, looking at some of the comments, and, when we were having some of the pods up and talking about listeners, we had said in the run up to the window, two key things. Firstly, whoever recruits best in this window gives themselves the best chance to be able to win the league in this three-way dance between ourselves, Celtic and Hearts. And we had also identified pre-January a striker was a must. And I can appreciate people, it is, and you said the perfect word there, it's the drama of the transfer window. Our podder Simon lives and breathes for it. Personally, I can do without it, but that's probably because I'm getting old and my health is starting to wane, and I don't need this kind of pressure on my heart. But it's more to do, I think, Rob, with the Rangers, and again, exactly as you just said, they had identified him early doors. And I mentioned in the update yesterday whether or not it was going to be from Southampton for Cameron Archer or alternatively for Rostock for Ryan Nadiri. I think it's perfectly fair for clubs to think the deal has to be right for them as a selling club. We've broken the German third division transfer record, which I don't think would have been that hard to do. But the bottom line, however, is that we had identified a target or targets that we wanted to go after. We probably, I think that we did have a plan B and C, whether or not we were going to be able to then look at other potential offers, even potential names that weren't even, put about in the media, because Rangers understood that we did need a striker to be able to come in. And obviously there was the legacy effect of, well, if that is going to happen, how quickly can we make that happen? And I'm fine with selling clubs being able to say, well, we want X amount of value and we may determine on what happens next. There is a sell-on fee included, and I never have really any issue with that, because fundamentally, if we sell this lad on for a profit, and his previous club are going to get a share of that, everybody wins, because ultimately the likelihood being that if we sell one for a profit, it's because he's had a really, really good season or time at Rangers. So I think Rangers do need credit. I think the board need credit, because I think that this is a statement of intent. You and I have known previous boards that had their feet get held to the fire. They likely as not would have walked away for the deal and tell the manager, you're going to have to deal with what you've got at the moment. But I do want to say that when you look at the January window as a whole, I think Rangers have identified and addressed some key areas. Maybe not as many as everybody would like. I get that, but we have done some business, and I'm very happy to be able to give the new signings a little bit of time to be able to try and bed in. I think we've got far more that we can see from Skov. He's literally played 2 games for us at the moment. He the guys will need a wee bit of time to be able to bed in, but Nadiri has been playing and he has been scoring. So you're hoping that his bedding in period will be hopefully pretty minimal.
Yeah, you're right, Cammy. I mean, I think all of us looking at what was needed in the squad, I think we all knew that we needed a striker. I mean, the game just passed at Hibernian sort of shows just how toothless we can be at times up front, and so we knew that we needed another striker, and so I guess on that regard, we have to be happy that we've got one. There were other areas of the team as well that we needed to strengthen. We were very, very short at left back. We managed to bring somebody in. Not seen him yet, obviously, but it would that was an area that needed looked after. And I think all of us over the course of the season have been talking about the balance in midfield and the need for different options in there. So to get a midfielder in as well, I think is good. Scott Olsen is the showbiz signing of it all. You know, pretty excited about him. Just you know, maybe it's just we're of the same age, Cammy. To have a Danish winger at Rangers is something that gets me going anyway. But very excited about him. So I mean, I think across the squad, across the starting 11, the team, it definitely feels as if we have strengthened. We're strengthened in the right areas. I think we probably still need a number 10 or an attacking midfielder. But the areas that were very, very obviously needing strengthened have been strengthened, and at the same time, we at the time as we're recording, a few players have moved out as well, with the prospect of some more going out the door. So, do we think it's a good window? I think objectively, yes. I think it has been good. For the reasons I set out, we strengthened where we needed strengthened, and we've managed to move some players on who were never going to contribute, and we're only just taking a wage out of the club. So hopefully, all of that is a positive. And going back to your point as well about who does the best business over the course of the transfer window out of the three clubs, I think we've done pretty well. Obviously, they don't dish out silverware at the end of the transfer window, and they do it at the end of the season. But I think we've done pretty well, and there's some fairly hapless sort of transfer business seems to have been going on at Celtic last night. So we're stronger coming out of the window than we are when going into it, and I guess that's all you can really ask for.
Yeah, and I'd be keen to kind of pick your brains as well for a couple of loans that have went out now. We know that Joe Rothwell has left Rangers. He's moved on a permanent move across to Sheffield United. But I wanted to ask you, Rob, about a couple of loan deals that have materialised. Clinton Nsiala has moved to Westerlo for a loan, and there is an option to make that deal permanent. But most interestingly, I think what's caused the most amount of conversation across our network for the last few days is that Finlay Curtis has obviously joined Kilmarnock under Neil McCann. It seemed to be a bit of a perfect storm for me because, and we will talk about Hibs in just a moment. We always do the kind of post-match reviews on Flagship and Extra anyway, the games that we've just played. But it felt a little bit like a perfect storm because you had Curtis, who I thought played well across in Portugal midweek, and then a real lack of attacking quality at Easter Road on Sunday. And so people then felt the Curtis deal could actually hamper us. He might be better to stay. Now, my personal opinion was that I wanted to get Curtis development time. I wanted to be able to get minutes. I don't know if he would get that now with Scott Olsen coming in and taking a right wing berth. And if we do bring in another striker, I don't even think that Danny Rule is going to be playing Finlay Curtis through the middle. Now, I know that he has played in other positions for us, Chris. He's even played at left back for us this season. I don't know what value that's bringing him. He's going to be moving into Kilmarnock now, where he's obviously got an existing relationship with Neil McCann, and I think McCann will look to be able to utilise him. So I think it's a positive move. I personally like Nsiala, but I don't think it's going to work for him at Rangers, which I'm kind of disappointed in because I thought he was a fairly honest player that needed developed. But I'm actually encouraged that if Nsiala, for example, doesn't have a future at Rangers, then we can look to be able to offload him. If Curtis can go and get that development time, get that experience, get that growth, then I think he will come back to Rangers a far better player. So for our outgoings, I'm actually pretty positive in terms of what's happened there. There are rumours going about that Rabbi Matondo potentially could be moving to Rapid Vienna. By the time this show comes out, that may have been confirmed. We don't know. But we needed to do some trimming as well as being able to get some acquisitions as well.
I think that's right, Cammy, and I guess there's two sides really to the outgoings. One is Finlay Curtis, as you say, which is a player I think all of us who watch Rangers would say that we like. He's direct, he's not afraid to shoot, and I think we all hold a lot of hope for him. So him going out in a development loan on the surface makes sense. I think I can understand why there's why some people feel that it's the wrong move because of general lack of creativity and our ability to be absolutely garbage up front. But for the player's long-term development, and if he's going to have a long-term future at Ibrox, him going out and playing and getting some minutes, I think is a good thing. So I'm probably more on your side than that of the people who think it's a bad move, Cammy. But more importantly, what I think is a positive is that we seem to have done that which we've not been able to do over the past couple of years, which is to move players on who are not contributing. So Insiala, again, the glimpses you see of him, I've never seen him play in the flesh. I've only seen him on the telly. Not really seen enough to form an opinion. But the most important opinion is that of the manager, who clearly doesn't think he's got a future at the club, and we've managed to move him on. And some more of the players who are not going to be part of Danny Rowe's squad going on are also moving on. So I think that's really positive as well, because I think, if you've got a big squad, that's quite difficult to manage, particularly when you've got players who feel that they should be playing and ultimately are not, but also just the financial impact of having a bloated squad with people who we have signed who have not been good signings and who continue to earn a decent wage out of the club. I think just getting those guys moved on is the right thing to do. I know Rabbi Matondo, you see all sorts of quotations about how much he's actually earning, but getting him off the wage bill is something that we need to do. And I know there was talk just at the sort of end of play last night that even there's conversations ongoing to sort of terminate his contract to allow him to move. So, I mean, I think that's just something we've just got to get better at. We've got to, if we do make some signings and they don't work out, then we should be able to move them on, much like we've done with Joe Rothwell, actually. I think that's the model. We brought somebody in. It was pretty clear that it's not going to work out. We've managed to move them on. So, we need to be better at that. In the same way, they also need to be better. Stop buying garbage, but that's another debate, I suppose.
Yeah, and I think it's what we always try and talk about, with trying to have some temperance and some patience, because not everyone's going to hit the ground. And there was plenty of conversation at the time, about why we going after lower league, or I should say, English lower league targets like Fernandez. And I'm not rewriting history. Fernandez had huge question marks around him, but he's now over time developed himself into a starting berth within that defence. And he has been fit, and he's been reliable. And we have had to rely on him. Obviously, the injuries to Suter and Cornelius, and again, I don't think Giga's been able to move him out of that place, and rightly so. He's absolutely been a goal threat. He's been a match winner for us. So it probably shows you, Rob, that you will get some right, you will get some wrong. Rothwell, for me, is a big disappointment, because you understood the relationship that you had with Russell Martin at the time. He quite clearly fancied him, quite clearly thought he could come in here to do it. I think Rothwell came in with a degree of confidence that he could do the same. And Joe Rothwell's played in an incredibly competitive league. The Championship is a tough, tough league. And he was able to stand out in that. He's come up to Scotland, and it hasn't worked for him. But you've said it there. What we can't do any longer is make a mistake and then keep paying into that mistake because it hasn't worked out for us. And the manager has spoken, and this is something I do want to ask you about as well, given where we are now for the current squad. The manager has obviously had conversations to say you need to be able to think about what's best for you, and that is going to be at another club. But equally, and this is what I'm keen to talk to you about as well. You mentioned in there that we didn't get all of the positions that we're looking at for. For me, it was probably on the left side. You mentioned an attacking midfielder. I think now what has to happen is the manager has to turn around to some of these players, and I'm not picking these names deliberately, but players like Gassama, Mikey Moore, Tello Asgard, how he's going to work in with Raskan and Chukwani will be interesting. Mo Diamande, Scovolson, Antman, because obviously Antman's still here. He's going to have to say to these players, you are it. And when you are getting your opportunity, because you will get opportunities, you are going to have to be able to lift us to be able to do that. Because I think what you saw at Hibs at the weekend, and I said this yesterday in the update, you could have Ellen Haaland up front for Rangers against Hibs on Sunday. If he cannot get any kind of form of service, he is not scoring goals. So we've brought in a striker. I would be turning around to some of those supporting players who are looking to be able to get that ball forward and say, you have to be braver, you have to take more risks, you have to be able to drive with the ball. And now you've got someone who will be in the box, who will look to be able to try and finish, because that is what we're missing. But you guys are going to be responsible for providing that service to him. Whether it comes down the flanks or through the middle, you are going to have to be able to step up. And if you do that, you're putting yourself in the driving seat to be able to win this league.
Yeah, it's hard to argue with any of that, Cammy. I mean, I think we had 2 shots on goal or something at Hibs, and one of them was the disallowed Mikey Moore goal. So it doesn't matter who was playing up front. You know, if you've not got service coming through, and you know that was the feature of the game against Hibs, was just this sheer lack of creativity. It was pretty turgid to watch, and reminded us of games earlier on in the season where that was definitely going on. You know, one hopes it was a bad day at the office, and the improvement that we have seen in the league and domestically over the course of the past couple of months under Danny Rowe continues. But you're right, you know, there's not a team sitting in another room waiting to come in and do the job for it. The players we've got are the players we've got, and they are, you know, they have an almost unbelievable opportunity, Cammy, when you think about where we were. They have an opportunity to win silverware, and you know, I'm sure all of us at some point in this season have completely written off the notion that silverware was even possible. So for us to be sitting here now thinking, you know, we're still in the title race, that there's cups to be chased after, a cup to be chased after, is pretty remarkable. So the players do need to step up, and that's the test of character, because you know one of the while I think, you know, Celtic have been pretty hapless in the transfer market, and you know I think Davy Edgar said it in our group last night, that you know the signings they were making were the dictionary definition of signing a player just so you can say you've signed somebody. As they do have players in their squad that have been through this before, that they do know how to get things over the line, they do know how to win things. So we need not just the players to step up in terms of the performances, but also they need to show character here, because hearts aren't going away. You know, all of us, I'm sure, have thought at some point, well, they'll stumble and they'll fall away, but they just don't look like they're going to. So we're in a proper race here, and the only way we're going to win it is with that mixture of strong character, determination, and not a small amount of skill on the park as well. So it's a big ask, but nobody else is going to do it other than the players that we've got. So they need to step up.
Yeah, and it's probably why it's been interesting. And again, it's just fortuitous for me in terms of having the conversation in the flagship a couple of days after Easter Road. I was at Easter Road, I walked out, and I was pissed off that we had dropped points, but I was probably more pissed off at our lack of creation, as you rightly mentioned. Um, and in fairness, and I'm going to be totally open with this, I think if I was a Hibs fan just now, and you know, I would be looking at that game going, they probably had the clearer chances. But then it probably takes a little bit of you know my own internal thought process to say, you know, like a week ago or 2 weeks ago, whenever it was, and we were talking about this, everybody's going to drop points. Now, I appreciate that you know 1 point might not be as damaging, because every fan is going there going, right, well, we need to get 3 points, and every game's a must win now. I think we've got 14 left before the end of the season in the league. So, of course, every game is a must win. But because we're doing this three-way dance at the moment, here's a news flash. Celtic and Hearts will drop points as well. Now, we will talk about Kilmarnock at Ibrox in just a moment, but that's probably where I've been at in terms of processing it is, you know, is dropping 2 points at Easter Road the worst thing in the world? I don't think it is. What annoyed me more and why I'm frustrated about it now and that lingering effect is because I just wanted to see a really positive reaction following the defeat in Porto, following the manners of the goals that we lost in the Europa League final game. It was about us being able to try and return back to removing some of that silliness. And on paper, I think Danny Rule and his players can turn around and say, "Well, we did because you know we didn't concede." I think that's our sixth game on the bounce with a clean sheet. And that follows the mandate that Danny Rule had to come in. You mentioned games earlier on in the season. We've stopped shipping domestically silly goals that turn a point into no points. So he had to get his players back into a level of belief and cut out, as I say, some of those silly mistakes that led to stupid goals. And whilst Hibs did create some chances, one in particular was just a ball that was fizzed through to Martin Boyle, and he takes a great touch on it. I have to absolutely give him credit for this. And at that point, he has to force a save from Butland. Butland makes another good save from a ball that's going across his left hand shoulder. What Rangers have to do now is, and again, this is why it's beneficial for this game against Kelly to come up so quickly, is get back on the winning streak of saying, right, we need to be able to maintain our consistency. I would be stunned, Rob, absolutely stunned if Hearts weren't able to demolish a St Mirren team that basically hasn't woke up for its hangover after the League Cup final. So we've got to assume that other teams will pick up points, but we have to be ready to take advantage when they don't.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a unique season in a bunch of ways. One, I think, just because at times both ourselves and Celtic have been absolutely atrocious, and it's quite unusual for that to be the case. For both teams in the same season, and that's kind of opened the door. Hearts have been good and consistent, and as I say, they've not fallen away. But there are also some other good teams in the league. Where Motherwell are a good team. There's places that I think that in seasons gone past, you'd expect the teams who are fighting for the championship to go to these grounds, your Fir Parks and all these places, and win quite comfortably. And I don't think that's the case this season. So I do agree with you. I think there will be drop points, and we all have to play each other a few more times as well. So the points are going to get spread around. And as you say, the important thing is that we get back into it, that we don't allow a dip to become, a bad run, to become a slump, that we just, we lift our game, and we continue to win, because, you know, I still find it really, really difficult to believe that we're in the title race, because we were so bad under Russell Martin, and it lasted for so long that you thought this was all irretrievable, and it's not. So there's a real opportunity there for us to go on and win the league, and you know, hard though that may be to believe, we've just got to go and get it done, and so we are requiring the players to to look at things like the Hibs performance at the weekend, and just say that that's not acceptable. We've got to be better than that, and that's got to start when we play Kilmarnock on Wednesday night. So here's hoping for a much improved performance, and we see some of the creativity that was sorely lacking against Hibs at the weekend.
Is the enemy of this that Rangers have been able to claw themselves into? Does it feel like an achievement just to be involved in the conversation? And the reason why I mention that is because I think we've all focused on the recovery across the course of this season, and you've made a great point. Like, I understand Celtic are a bin fire, right? And obviously they're all fighting each other, and I couldn't really care less about that because, again, I don't really care about them. And Hearts have maintained the consistency. I think we thought when they lost Devlin and they lost Shankland, it could be a major blow for them. They had a wobble towards the tail end of the last year, but they arrested that slide really quickly. To your point about how we can then turn that around. But I suppose really what I'm trying to say is how much can Danny Rule expect out of these players more than he's already got? Do you think that they've got the appetite to be able to go that one step further? Because accusations that have been placed towards previous Rangers teams across the course of the last 10 years or so was we're not bringing in winners. We're not bringing in guys who have went the distance in league campaigns successfully. So we now need to be able to kind of cover up. There's a you know a real feeling around. It can't just be an achievement to be able to try and get into second place. That simply isn't good enough for Rangers. But I worry personally. There's only so many miracles that Danny Rule can work, and my hope is that he's changing the conversation now from you need to stop giving away stupid goals domestically. You need to be able to start believing in yourselves a little bit more. And almost as if the third part of that conversation now has to be that if you want to win this league, you are going to have to be braver. And yeah, you were hampered at the start through some horrendous systems and horrendous man management, but that cloud has gone. Just because things are brighter now doesn't mean that that's what we've achieved, and then that's it. You have to be able to take it, and I think that now what we're doing is we're going to come into the final third of the season. I don't think that's a problem at Hearts, and the reason why I say that is because now what they've done is they've overachieved, but they've got self belief within that team that now they're looking at each other going, we can achieve a miracle here, an absolute miracle, but we have to be able to rely on to each other. I think I see a start of that within some of the results that we've had recently, but I think it's a really tough thing to do when you consider how hamstrung we were at the beginning of the season.
Yeah, I mean, with Hearts, there's sort of similarities, isn't there, with Leicester when they won the league? That the longer it went on, and the fact that they didn't fall apart and let one of the big boys through just created an incredible spirit amongst that team, and that drove them forward. And I think you're right to sort of pinpoint that with Hearts, because they had their little dip and they fought their way through it. So you know,
And now, sorry to interrupt, but now it almost feels as if, like Leicester, as you say, it becomes a siege mentality at the
yeah,
club,
absolutely, Cammy.
because now what they're thinking is, well, we're not going to allow ourselves to slip up. You have to step up in order to be able to beat us. And both Old Firm clubs this season, they've fallen at opportunities presented to them to be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, the point with us is, like, we have good players in the squad now. Is it the final version of the squad that we want? No, but there are good players in there, and I think that we need to, we need the manager, I think, to 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 do as you say, which is to change it from, right, we need to get out of this hole, to, right, now we need to go on and improve and be brave and do all the things that you spoke about. Because you know one of the things that you know I've been frustrated with in the past, I suppose, is just the general mood round about the club, and the comments and the language that you hear from, be it the captain or be it the manager, about it's going to be a difficult game this week, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, and really, really concentrating on the negatives. We've got a squad of players that, in the current circumstances, are good enough to win the league, but they need to go and get it. And so I think that, if you look at Danny Rowe's career, he's, his management career as a manager by himself may not have a huge amount of experience of winning, but he's been in successful environments. He knows what it's like to be surrounded by winners. And I think one of the most frustrating, damaging, whatever words you want to use to describe it, sort of things about Rangers over the past few years has been this, refusing to, sort of puff our chest out and say we are Rangers and we're better than everybody else, and we're going to win the day. Because you just never got the sense that that was it. There was always, this talk of, oh, we're going to Easter Road, that's a difficult place to go, or Ross County away, that's it's tough up there. I just think we need to be so much more positive. We need to be on the front foot, both in terms of what we do on the park, but also off it, in the way that we carry ourselves. Because this is an unbelievable opportunity. Celtic, you know, are not the Celtic that have been for the past few years. They are there for the taking. Hearts, who knows what happens if they get some pressure applied to them. So the only people that can go out and change this story are us, and I'm hopeful that that's what's been talked about within the club. It's less of the, it's difficult to go there, and more of a, we're Glasgow Rangers, and we're going to beat you, because I think that's the attitude, and that's the only way that we actually develop this squad of players into a team of winners, as opposed to just a decent squad of players that's been assembled by a manager and performed relative miracles up to now.
Yeah, I mean that speaks a lot to, I think, what Danny Rose mentioned before around, the out probably the outlook of the players and where it can come into, and I agree with you, because I hate players, more so even Rangers players, who almost look and speak like victims, because I don't believe that they are there. Because then what you're doing is, because you'll get behind a team or an individual player who'll say, yeah, from a quality perspective, there's gaps. So therefore, I want to be able to try and support them, because maybe we're asking them something that he can't do. Rangers have enough quality to be able to beat every team in this league, in my opinion. And we have shown that. We showed it at Parkhead, and equal at the same time as well. it does come down to that mentality thing, because I think we have better players than Hibs. But equally, if you don't win in your individual battles, if you don't get into a space where you have that self belief, I think it's been fine to be able to go in that, run of 8 wins and a draw in your last 9 games. But at that point, what you then say is, yeah, it's the old Bill Struth thing, isn't it? It's, God help whoever you're playing next week, because you want to be able to turn around and say, this was a missed opportunity. We've dropped points. That is unacceptable. And we move into Wednesday night against Kilmarnock. Now, it'll be interesting. We'll talk about this briefly, Rob, because I do want to get your how you feel that match will develop, because thankfully Livingston haven't been able to try and put together a decent run, which means that there's a decent gap between them and Kilmarnock. Kilmarnock will want, off the bottom of the table. There's quite clearly they brought in Neil McCann to be able to do that. So they will want away from anywhere near the foot of the table as they can possibly get. The simple fact is, however, that this means that Rangers cannot get involved in any of that noise and whatever Kilmarnock are trying to do. And they had a really good win at the weekend, so they'll start to feel an uplift. The point to this now is, and what Danny Rule has to be saying to these Rangers players is, we now need to go out and win this game, because you've got room to make up from last Sunday.
Yeah, I think that's exactly my point, Cammy, is that, there's 4 or 5 different ways in which you could frame this game on Wednesday night. You could talk about, all sorts of stories about, Neil McCann enjoying coming back, and all these kind of negative ways of thinking about it. And I just think we cannot do that. We've just got to say, we're at home, we're Rangers, we're playing Kilmarnock, we're going to win. Let's go out there, let's play with confidence, let's play attacking football, and let's score some goals. I just think that, the you said there that, we've got good enough players to beat anybody in this league this season, and we have had good enough players in our team to beat anybody in the league in previous seasons, going back over a number of years. And what stopped us, I think, is just our mentality. We've never accepted the fact that we are who we are, that we're a big club, that we should be beating all these teams. And I just think that the only way that we win this league is by believing that we can do it, and by believing in ourselves, and believing that we're Glasgow Rangers. And a game against Kilmarnock at Ibrox, there is no alternative outcome. It has to be a victory, and that has been lacking for me. That when I look back over the course of the past few years, I do a show on the network, as you know, Cammy, where we look back on previous games under different managers, and where it's gone wrong is quite often a mentality thing, because we had decent players, but we just couldn't get games over the line, or we would go in slumps, we would collapse, we'd do all these different things. And it all comes down to character, and it all comes down to determination, and it all comes down to belief. And I think that's what we need the manager to instill in that squad of players, that we can do this. Because if they don't have that belief, then I just don't see how we do it.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that is a question, because I think that going to approach these gigs, and this is going, and I'm sorry for spoiler alert for anyone who's not went through things like this before. Rob and I certainly have, but this is going to be the conversation for every game between now and the end of the season, unless we torpedo our own chances as the league progresses. It will be play X team, no matter whether it's Celtic, Hearts, whomever. Go out, be brave, be aggressive in the right way. And I don't mean steam into people. I mean, go out there, win your personal battles, take risks, make sure that you take care of the ball. And again, as I say, you have now shown the quality. You have now been able to unearth that level of, right, we can do this, because I know I'm going to be better than my opponent. And whoever's marking me, whoever's, next to me, I am going to be better than him, because I've got faith in this group and the other players around me. And if I get into bother, I will get out of bother, and my team will help me get out of that. But by and large, it is about being aggressive with the ball and being able to take it to your opponent in the best way possible.
And Danny Rowe's got experience of that. He's been around, squads, groups of players that are winners, that have that sort of winning mentality. So he may not have a huge amount of experience as a manager in his own right, but he knows what it takes to win. And I just hope beyond hope that as well as sort of tactical tweaks and sort of making the team better organised and thinking about shape and all the stuff that he did when he came in. That he's also working very, very hard with the group to make sure that they have that confidence, that they have that belief that can drive them on to winning a league championship. Because I think if he does that, that's the secret sauce. We can have great players, Cammy, and we've had decent players over the past X number of years, and we've just not been nowhere near it. So for me, the secret sauce is that mentality that says, I'm better than you. I'm part of a huge club in Glasgow Rangers, and you should fear us because we're going to beat you. And if we can get that back, I'll just be so happy because I think it will drive us on to success.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, listen, folks, that will do us for this week on Flagship. Again, my apologies for the slight delay. Hopefully, Rob and I have been able to talk about it to justify why we've had it out slightly later. I will be back with you on Thursday to unpack the game against Kilmarnock and look forward to our return to Scottish Cup action as we face Queen's Park at Ibrox on Sunday. It has been a pleasure to talk to you all. Thank you for your patience. Thank you to Mike Lee and Paul Myers. But my biggest thanks has to go to the gentleman who I'm going to definitely buy a calendar for and a 24-hour clock for his birthday. Rob, listen, thank you so much for coming on, buddy. I do want to give a shout out, and you've set that up perfectly. That if you wish to hear more from Rob and a whole host of great podders, the show that Rob mentioned, they're currently on the Gerrard era. Let's Go, it's called, and it is a brilliant listen. And it's not even so much for me, Rob. What I love about that show, and as you rightly say, you've done obviously all the kind of the previous managers as well, is walking through the seasons and going through it week by week as well. It feels a little bit like you're going a wee walk through history. And sometimes I get caught into the whole football's transactional. It's how I feel now and in the next 5 minutes. But then when you go back and you look at it, you start to remember things and really uncover things which you had probably stored at the back of your mind. But it's a phenomenal show, and you and the boys do an absolutely brilliant job of researching it as well.
Yeah, listen, Cammy, that's kind of you to say. I mean, the thing about the show and doing the managers is exactly as you say. It does sort of bring back at the minute pleasant memories because we're doing the 55 season, but it also, the amount of times that we've been talking about a game or we've been talking about a period in our history where we were just surprised, because you do forget things, you forget incidents, you forget things that were going on at time, and you do rewrite things in your own head to suit how you think they were. So we've surprised ourselves. It's an anorak's dream because we do every single game and we cover it. So it's really, really enjoyable. But yeah, if you're not a subscriber, then think about subscribing because it's the whole network's well worth the money.
100%. And it's dead cheap as well. Do you know what I mean? Dirt cheap. I'll be back with you on Thursday, folks. And as I say, you know exactly where to go to if you want all of your latest Rangers news as well. Thanks so much for listening. David will be back with you next week on Flagship at the regular schedule as well. So we'll speak to you then. Bye-bye.